Hi, I'm Avery Sharpe, and you're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi, everyone. John Liebman here. You're watching the #1 site for learning bass online, ForBassPlayersOnly.com, where I've taken the frustration out of learning bass so you can build confidence, have fun, and just enjoy making music. It's not for everyone. It's ForBassPlayersOnly.com. We have a very special guest this week. He was with McCoy Tyner for like 20 some years. He was with Avery Sharpe, Dizzy Gillespie, Pat Metheny, everybody, just a list of greats. And welcome to you, Mr. Avery Sharpe. How are you?
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me, John. I'm good.
Well, thank you. I saw you with McCoy. I think it might have been at the Village Vanguard around the late 80s, just a trio. Would that have been Louis Hayes around that time?
It probably been Louis, or I think Louis left in '89, so it could have been Aaron Scott, but it probably was Louis Hayes.
I want to get to you and some current things. I know you have a lot to talk about, but I've got to ask you about McCoy. You were with him for so many years. How would you like him to be remembered? What would you like people to know about him? Because you must have gotten to know him really well.
Well, I've known him and his family for so long that I actually sort of became part of his family from working together for so long. Both of us watched each other go through our changes in life. I started working with McCoy at the point where he was at his life, and of course I was a kid. And so he watched my family grow. He watched me grow as a person, as a musician. He watched once again as I said, my family. I watched him go through his changes that he went through with his family. Both of us great times and bad times. But I think the thing that I would like people to know about McCoy, not just as a musician, obviously he changed the way that people look at piano, and to me that's the measure of a great musician. When you change the way people look at music or look at an instrument, that to me is because we all can play, but if you change the way that everybody looks at that instrument and tries to approach it that way, that's to me that's the measure of a great musician. But not only be a great musician, I mean, he was a great person. And I think that's why we were together for so long. Our personalities were similar, in that McCoy was sort of a really laid back kind of guy. I never saw him really, like a lot of people, you'd be on the road and they fly off the handle. I just watched the way that he would deal with stuff. And he wasn't one of those ones that would sit you down and you need to do this. He did more by example. Just watching him, the way that he, as a leader, dealt with things, and just as a person, how he dealt with things. He was very consistent. Obviously, sometimes your personality comes out through your playing. His playing was incredibly consistent all the time, and as a person, he was pretty consistent. And that's kind of the way I am, in terms of emotional and just the way, you deal with things. So I think I would just like to say that, he was an incredible spirit, incredible person, that somebody that you would want to be around, somebody that you would want, looking at problems, because that's all, really, we're just problem solving every day, like bass playing, problem solving, how to get through the changes, how to get from from an A flat 9 to whatever. We're always trying to solve problems. But no, he was a great guy, just a beautiful individual.
I remember another time I saw McCoy with the Milestone Jazz Stars with Ron Carter and Sonny Rollins and Al Foster.
I listened to that record to death. That was
me too. I had tickets that day. It was a Saturday night. I had tickets to the Michigan State football game. And this was on the same night. And if I went to one, I couldn't go to the other. And I thought, why am I even thinking about this? This is a no-brainer. I'm going to the concert. Oh, that was great.
I never got a chance to see them live. The recordings, lost my mind.
Yeah. I do want to talk about you. I was looking at the interview that we did on ForBassPlayersOnly.com. You were one of the first ones. That interview was published on September 21st, 2009.
Good Lord, you went to the time tone on me, bro.
So, Avery, anything new? Hey, there was a great, you told the whole story about being, what were you, number 6 of 8 kids, and
Right.
your mom would only allow certain music in the house, but your dad had all the cool James Brown and all the other records that that he would sneak in and you'd listen, and that's how you got it's
I was raised in a very religious family. Raised in a very religious family, Pentecostal, and I'm playing the devil's music for those who understand, but that's it.
Yeah. But you had a great quote in there. It wasn't a quote, it was just you talking, but now it's a quote. You said, "I was interested in girls and thought girls liked bass players." That was part of your motivation to learn the bass.
Like any other adolescent, I was interested in girls, and I'm 16 years old. I was interested in girls, and I thought girls like musicians, especially bass players. So that's why I started playing bass.
Yeah. Well, I could ask you how all that worked out, but I think that would take the interview in a different direction.
Right,
exactly. Well, 2009 was a long time ago. I'm sure you've done a lot, and you talked about some things you had coming up, but maybe you can share with me a few highlights of some of the stuff that you've done recently, or some of the more notable things that you've done. You mentioned some classical stuff and a concerto, I think, for jazz,
right,
trio and orchestra.
Yeah, that was with Kevin Eubanks and Marvin Smitty Smith.
Right.
And then I started doing work with Jasmine Guy. It was a play based on the Harlem Renaissance. Basically, it was a one-woman play, and I wrote music indicative of the Harlem Renaissance and some modern music, because it wasn't like Eight Misbehaving or a Broadway show. And that
I played that show with the Fifth Dimension. Yeah.
So she did, poetry. Most people just knew her from that TV show. They knew her as the character Whitley, but she actually is a dancer. That's what she started out with. But in the theater world, she's called a triple threat, because she could act, sing, and dance. So I wrote the music for that, and did a number of recordings. With my trio with Anaji Allen Gums and Bernard Harper, and then the trio was Anaji. A different drummer, Yoran Israel.
Well, tell me about 400. I know that was a very special project for you.
Yeah, 400 was it's really sort of a culmination of a lot of work that I've already been doing for years. And, 400 was the anniversary of when African Americans were brought to the shores of the USA in 1619 in Virginia. And so in 2017 or 2018, I was actually in Whole Foods store, and there was a doctor, she's a kidney doctor. I can't think of the technical word for it.
Nephrologist? Is that it?
Something like that.
A kidneyologist.
Yeah, kidney doctor, kidneyologist, yes, exactly. But she's also a visual artist as well. And I've done some projects and written some things for her. And when I was in Whole Foods, and she goes, 2019, it's coming. And for Black folks who are in the history or, have an educational field, at 2017, if someone says 2019, you know exactly what that means. That means the anniversary of 400 years of Black folks being here. It's coming up. And so she's looking at me. She goes, "You're not listening to me anymore." And I was like, "No, because I'm hearing a project now. I'm hearing music." And so to mark that, I came up with the concept of 400. For 400 years, an African American musical portrait. And I framed it more as a portrait and not just like a regular album. So I was thinking, well, so how do I put 400 years of an experience into 60 minutes worth of music? So I broke it up into centuries. The first 100 years is the arrival. The next 100 years is the colonial period. Next 100 years is the antebellum, slavery, Civil War. And then after that, the next 400 years, you know, it's the 20th century up into Barack Obama. And so what I did was when I wrote the music, I did like 2 or 3 tunes for each period. It's already there for me. It's just a matter of not only, I mean, from you know, not to make it academic, but to make it more creative. It was how I hear the music is trying to put myself in my ancestors, you know, in their shoes. What would be going on in my mind if that was happening? You know, how would I feel about it?
I think it's great how you've embraced so many different styles and types of music. There was something else you said in the first interview. You said, my fantasy situation would be the John Coltrane Quartet meets the New York Philharmonic.
Yeah.
Wow. Does that sound like something you'd say?
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's the music is that, to me, that's the way I hear the music. The music is not just in this club or super band or whatever. It's music. To me, it's some of the most sophisticated and spiritual music on the planet. So if you were to put a great orchestra with somebody like Coltrane, I mean, not just, you know, sometimes people put things together because they think it might do this, but the right orchestra with the right cats like Coltrane, that'd be mine. I mean, I would just faint, you know.
Speaking of Coltrane, do you feel like you inherited some of his vibes or for lack of a better word, through McCoy, for all the time McCoy spent with Coltrane? Did any of that consciously or subconsciously, do you think, get passed on to you?
Without a doubt.
Can you pinpoint anything tangible, anything specific?
Well, I mean, if you listen to my writing, yes. I mean, you're going to hear, you know, the record I did with 400, great young piano player, Zakai Curtis, is playing my stuff. And he goes, man, it sounds like McCoy, but it's not McCoy, you know? And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, he had that kind of influence on me. And people forget that Coltrane would not have been, I mean, Coltrane would have been Coltrane, but he would not have been the Coltrane that we finally got if it hadn't been for McCoy. You know, people don't give McCoy a lot of credit for that, but McCoy was actually the perfect piano player for Train, and McCoy was playing like that when Train came along as well. So it was kind of a great, you know, marriage. I mean, like I said, you know, Coltrane was a bad cat. I mean, he would have been great without it, but in terms of where he moved to, McCoy definitely had a lot to do with that. And sometimes people don't know, they just say, well, you know, McCoy and Train, but they wouldn't have sounded like that if McCoy hadn't been there. But if a different piano player had been there, it would have been totally different, because McCoy, as great as a piano player as he is, he's more of a great musician. He's extremely sensitive in terms of his playing and what's going on. And people say, well, who do you like to comp behind you, you know, in terms of like when you're soloing for bass? I said McCoy, because he's like, I mean, sometimes he just lays out, which was great for me. It gave me all the space. But when he didn't, the stuff that he would play behind you was just, you're like, dang. We did a quartet one time many times with Freddie Hubbard. And I think Louis Hayes was on. It was me, Louis Hayes, and McCoy, and Freddie Hubbard was a special guest with us. And we were somewhere in Germany. And Freddie gets a little upset. He goes, McCoy, stop playing so much. He says, you playing what I was going to play before I knew what I was going to play. McCoy, I mean, McCoy's just he's that sensitive. So wow. With Train, I mean, he like I said, he was the perfect cat. I mean, to be a musician, you have to have a certain amount of sensitivity anyway to play with other people and to react and everything like that. Some people have it better than others, you know, and I think McCoy was like the pinnacle of that, you know, in terms of that part of being a musician. You know, like I said, he's a great piano player, but he's also such a sensitive cat that he could go anywhere, and what he plays behind you kind of elevates you rather than gets in your way. And
How do you think he would have responded if Train had sprung giant steps on him like he did Tommy Flanagan?
Interesting. I wasn't around during that time. I might have been first
I
grade.
wasn't either. I just have the records.
But
I was around, but I wasn't active.
I think that's a good question. With the skill level that he had at that point, I think he would have. I don't know.
Giant Steps is so
It was so different at that time.
Yeah.
It was so different at that time. I think he would have been able to handle it. I mean, obviously Tommy Flanagan, you know, it was a little rough for Tommy because, you know, nobody was playing like that. But that's interesting. I think McCoy would have been able to handle it though.
Yeah, right. Let's talk about some bass stuff. For Bass Players Only, as you know, is a bass instruction site. I've got people from all over the world coming to For Bass Players Only every day to learn how to play bass. And these are not kids. They're not trying to be rock stars or trying to set the world on fire. Most of who comes here are men in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They've always wanted to do this. They want to play maybe some classic rock riffs with their friends or some blues shuffles or maybe some walking bass lines. Yeah, they have the transformation in them is just it's incredible to see the joy and the fulfillment. But while I have you here, I want to take this opportunity to ask you what advice you have for somebody like that who wants to learn to play bass. What do you think is important for them to know?
Well, I think the first thing is it's going to take some work, and don't get frustrated. Just a quick story. You know, Reggie Workman was my first bass teacher in college because by today's standard, I really started playing upright late. I didn't start till I was 19. And Reggie was I didn't know how to even tune it from day one. He taught me from day one, and I'm playing electric. He said, you know, electric is not my generation, it's your generation. But he said, you picked it up so quickly. He goes, don't stop. But he said, focus most of your time on the upright. And the thing that he said to me that really helped me was he said, you're going to want to quit, but don't do it. And sure enough, you know, you start playing and you start getting calluses and your fingers started bleeding. And I was, you know, almost in tears on campus. I'm like, nobody's going to hire me for this stupid thing. I'm just going to play electric. So with, you know, people who are like 40s, 50s, or 60s, and you're getting into it, you know, there's going to be a point where you might say, well, why am I doing this? You know, it's like, no, don't quit. Because the great thing about music and the great thing about bass is that, you know, the music starts from the bottom up, so everybody needs bass. And second of all, once you learn something, especially music, nobody can take that away from you. That becomes a part of you. You know, no matter what's happening on your job, no matter what's happening, you know, with your kids or your grandkids, when you put the instrument in your hand, that's you. You know, even if you're playing somebody else's line, you're playing their line, but you're the one that's playing it. So you still have to put you into it. You know, it's like music. It's like reading music. Yeah, they're notes, but you have to bring it to life.
And there are a lot of people, a lot of my students, like I said, they're older, so they have arthritis. They have, I was talking to a student yesterday, a woman, she's got problems with both of her hands, so she has to proceed slowly. I had somebody that had hip replacement surgery not too long ago. So a lot of people have parts of them that hurt. Any thoughts about, you know, they love playing the bass, they want to play music, and you know, I could say, yeah, moderation, be careful. If it hurts, that's your body's way of telling you, you know, listen to your body. Do you have any thoughts on that? Any insights?
You know, it's funny that you say that, because I'm actually starting a podcast with my youngest daughter, who's also an artist. It's called One Healthy Musician.
Ooh.
Dealing with, you know, of course, you know, I've been a health enthusiast all my life. You know, I'm vegan, exercise. Actually, that's what I really originally went to school for was,
Right.
I was a jock. I was a physical education major for a couple of months anyway, and then realized that music was better.
That's right. You talked about that in the first interview.
So, I'm a lot of times musicians, we don't really talk about the whole health thing. So I'm going to be talking about diet, exercise, mental health as well, clarity. And, I have an interview with a musician as well, not only just jazz musicians, but all kind of musicians, all genders, singers, everybody, because we all have challenges, just walking around the planet. But when you add an instrument to that, so how do you deal with it? I'm having some physical problems as well. From holding my hand up for 50 years. We're not machines. So, there's different exercises that I've done over the years. In terms of, with upright, you're always got this bent, and so I do. Because I lift weights, I run. Bike. I'm still basically a jock, old jock, but still there. And of course, there are things that start to break down as we get older, no matter what we do. And, so there's exercises that I do to help my wrists, rolling off, 7-10 pound dumbbells. I don't know if you can see my hands, just to help with the strength in those. There's different finger exercises I do. I know, as you said, people have arthritis and different things.
Back pain, shoulder pain, elbows.
Yeah, I do as well. And so you just have to do what they call pain management. And that can be physical therapy. And I guess maybe I'm probably telling too much, but, I do have back issues as well from, like I said, from 50 years of having my arm up and bopping my head. I have problems in my occipital area here. And, so I'm learning how to modify my playing, instead of bending over the bass like this all the time. Now I'm trying to play more upright, have the bass on the longer peg, try to be more straight. Obviously, it's easier getting to thumb position too when you have it up higher. You're not reaching over it.
Yeah.
And what I would say to people, yes, it's, I'd say accept it, but you have to go from where you're at. If you are having finger problems, okay. Just like what Reggie told me, just don't stop. I played through the pain to where, it was satisfying.
Well, that sounds dangerous.
Yeah, yes, exactly. When of course I was 19 then too. But yeah, I would just say things, like pain management, if you can. And there's a difference between pain and where it's causing injury. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I can't tell a person where that point is. You have to know your body to know, well, this is damaging what it is that I'm doing, or it's just some pain that I have to get through. I hope I'm making sense.
Yes. What about challenges that aren't necessarily pain inducing? As somebody, a student with Parkinson's, I have a movement disorder. It affects the entire right side of my body. Most people don't even know that. Right. But I have trouble walking, and I at the Mayo Clinic 3 times. I went to Muhammad Ali's doctor in New York. I went, but it's not something that hurts, but it's something that the signals from the left side of my brain are not making it over to the right side of my body the way they should. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious if anything like that is on your radar, or if you're familiar with anything like that, any musician that was dealing with that kind of challenge.
No, I don't, but that might be something. Maybe I can interview you as well, from one healthy musician, and you might be able to enlighten people on certain things that, I quite honestly, that's something that I hadn't thought of. I'm thinking more of the mechanics and the physics. I hadn't thought about something that might be brain related that affects your limbs or your, you know, mobility or whatever. But yeah, that might be something.
That's my right eye. It's my swallowing. It's my right arm, my right leg, and it's nothing that's going to kill me. They say it's not like Parkinson's or Guillain-Barré or myasthenia gravis or any of those things. So the doctors had trouble. You know, at first they said, "Oh, it gets some psychotherapy." I said, "No, this is not in my head." Well, yeah, we could laugh about it now, but it wasn't funny. I said, "That's not me. That's just not me." You know, so it's the only thing that helped me was when I went to the doctor, and it was I told you Mayo, and this one I went to Cleveland Clinic, I went to Detroit Medical Center, I went to University of Michigan, I went all over. The only thing that really helped me, or the thing that helped me most, was just going through the motions and retraining the brain. Somebody said that it's like the signals are going on a path, but all of a sudden they went off in this field, this stray path, or in a swamp or tall grass or something.
Wow.
And you have to reteach the brain how to function and how to get those signals to the right side of your body.
That's well,
I was walking with a cane. I was, but the bright side, hey, I had handicap parking, which was great. I just love that. But we've gotten way off track here, but let me ask you one more question, Avery.
Sure. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. What would you be if you weren't a bass player? Something outside of music?
My father thought I would be a lawyer. My mother, knew I was going to be a musician because she was a musician. But I probably would be either an attorney or an entrepreneur.
Well, Avery, this has been great. We talked about a lot of stuff that I didn't think we were going to talk about, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Sorry about that. What did I say? I said I can get long-winded. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I got pretty long-winded today too, but it's all right. And you said some things about some projects that are either in the conceptual stage or in the actual working stage. So I think you opened it up for a follow-up interview, but I won't wait another 13 years until I get back to you.
Actually, I just got a grant to do a project from New England Foundation for the Arts, and it's called "I Am My Neighbor's Keeper." Trying to focus back in on, we're the me generation, and everything's about me. And we just had a knucklehead in the White House who was so about it's all about me, and just trying to come back to some basic values that I am my neighbor's keeper. I got to be concerned about it. So the project that I'm doing, it's going to be a trio with a string quartet. I'm going to have a Senegalese dancer, visual thing, But I just got a grant to do that. And
Congratulations. Well, that's great. You just definitely opened it up for a follow-up interview, and please keep me posted and let me know what's happening. And when you're further down the road with that project, let's talk about it, and let's share that great information with these nice people here.
John, great to see you, man.
Thank you. You too. I don't think we've ever met in person, although I did see you at, what did I say? I think it was the Village Vanguard. It was one of those, I'd always go there, or the Village Gate, or wherever it was in New York. But anyway, congratulations on all your success, and let us know about that project and anything else that would be of interest to bass players, and we'll be sure to share that information. Avery Sharpe, thank you very much. Such a pleasure, such an honor. I'm John Liebman. You are watching the #1 site for learning bass online, ForBassPlayersOnly.com, where I've taken the frustration out of learning bass so you can build confidence, have fun, and just enjoy making music. Remember, it's not for everyone. It's ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman. See you next week.